So I'm going to hold that funnel. I'm just going to drizzle it in there. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Thursday, October 10th here in South Georgia, and on today's video I'm going to show you why this little rig right here is now my favorite way to feed my plants. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that we are big fans of using fertilizer injectors to feed our plants. If you're new to the channel and not familiar with fertilizer injection, I'll explain it real quick. So there are certain devices out there, and I'll show you a couple examples here in a minute, that allow you to basically inject fertilizer through your watering system, whether that be through a water hose and a hand watering one, through a drip irrigation system, or through an overhead sprinkler. And it really makes it easy to feed your plants because you don't have to fertilize as a separate activity. You can basically do it while you water, and it's a great way to grow some really nice healthy plants because you can feed them just a little bit of fertilizer basically every time you water if you want to. You don't have to do it that frequently, but that's a lot of times the way we do it in the greenhouse here, just little bitty doses every time we water, and we grow out some really nice plants as a result. So let's go inside the greenhouse here, and I'll show you a couple options we've used in the past, some of the pros and cons of those, and then I'll show you what we're using now and how it works. So option number one that we've used quite a bit in the past is this easy flow injection system here. And the way this works, you basically have a tank right here that you fill up with liquid fertilizer, or you could use water soluble solid fertilizer, something that will dissolve, and you hook this up to your water source right there, and water goes into the tank, and then water and fertilizer comes out the tank into your overhead sprinkler, your hand watering one, or your drip system, whatever you're using to water your plants. And that easy flow injection system works pretty well. I've used it many times in the greenhouse here and in our in-ground garden plots outside, but there are a few things about it that can make it a little difficult to use. For example, you have to make adjustments depending on your flow rate or how much water output you have. It comes with these little flow discs that you have to put inside this little hose bib connector right here, and sometimes it can be tricky to calculate your water output and find out which flow disc you should be using, because if you don't put the right flow disc in there, it won't pull that fertilizer from the tank into your drip system, hand wand, overhead sprinkler. Another issue I have with the easy flow system is that you have to be a little bit careful with some of these thicker, more viscous organic fertilizers like the AgriThrive that we use a lot around here. You can't mix it too concentrated in that tank, or else it's just too thick and syrupy and viscous, and that little suction device inside the tank won't pull it up through there. So you can only mix a little bit at a time. You can't get it too thick or it won't pull fertilizer at all. And a third thing, the setup time on that, as far as filling it with fertilizer and getting it ready to go, is a little longer than some of the other options that I'll mention today. It doesn't take long to get that easy flow system up and going, but it does take longer than some other options that we've used. Now option number two that we don't necessarily use in our in-ground gardens, and I'll tell you why in just a minute, but that we've used a lot here in our greenhouse, is this little brass siphon injector. And so the way this one works is really simple. You just hook it up to your water source, and then we'd have our water hose plugged up to the other end there. Mix you up some fertilizer solution in a little bucket. Put that black tube down into that bucket, and when you turn the water on, it's gonna suck up that fertilizer solution through the black tube and inject it through your water hose. So this little rig right here is pretty inexpensive, and it also works really well. I have grown many veggie transplants and fig trees in this little greenhouse with this system right here. But There is a hose length restriction with this little brass injector here. I think it's 25 foot. So if your water hose is over 25 foot long, this thing won't pull that fertilizer out of the bucket. Now, it's not really an issue in this little 10 by 16 greenhouse here, but it would be an issue in my new greenhouse, which is 30 by 40. Also, with this system, if you're using organic fertilizers like we do, you got to deal with that stinky bucket. Now, I'm kind of used to the stinky bucket in the greenhouse, but a lot of people don't like smelling that stuff all the time. So if you're using some organic fertilizers that's got a little bit of a smell to it, you got that open bucket of it sitting in the greenhouse, and you might not like that smell. And as is the case with that easy flow injector I showed you earlier, you got to be careful with how thick the solution you mix is. So when using that IRRIGATION, I got to be careful. If I get that mixture in my little bucket there too viscous, it won't pull through here. So I have to do very, very light dosages of this stuff. Can't put too much fertilizer in the bucket because it's too thick and it just won't pull through this tube. And then a final issue I have with this particular system is that it drops the pressure coming out of my watering wand here pretty significantly, to the point where it takes me 3 times, maybe even longer, to water my plants than when I don't have this hooked up. So I got a lot less water coming out of here at one time, which means it takes me longer to keep all my plants happy. And that's very important nowadays, because when I come out here at 5:25 and I got to get the boys ready to go to football practice at 5:30, I don't have a whole lot of time, and I need to be able to water all these plants as quickly as possible. Which leads us to this particular system here, the one we're using now. I don't know if you call this DIG or just call it DIG. We'll call it DIG for simplicity's sake. I didn't know I was going to like this thing as much as I do. I just saw it on Drip Depot's website one day and thought I would give it a try, and I'll put a link in the description below if you want to try it out as well. Pretty simple setup here. Let me show you how it works. So much like that brass injector, you just hook it up between your water source and your water hose. You've got a fill spout right there, and you've got a drain spout down there. And you can use any kind of liquid fertilizer in this thing, synthetic or organic. It does say somewhere in that instruction manual that I can no longer find that if you're using thicker organic fertilizers like the IRRIGATION, for example, you got to cut it down by half. You just can't pour straight IRRIGATION in this thing. So the way I've been doing this, take a little dog's cup here and fill it not quite halfway full of water. I'll take my jug of IRRIGATION fruit and flower. This one's almost empty, and might not go completely 50-50. I'm gonna pour some of that in there. I don't know, 4 or 5 ounces maybe. And then I'm just gonna kind of swirl it around there, get it nice and mixed up. Now, if you don't like the lack of precision with that particular technique, keep in mind that injector there has a pint capacity, so you could exactly measure out your water and exactly measure out your fertilizer and get a perfect 50-50 ratio with it, so there was nothing wasted, and you can pour the whole thing in that injector. What I usually do is just mix it up in this cup, fill up that injector, and I'll take the rest of this and go pour it around one of my fig trees. So you can be exact with it if you want, but I ain't really got time for that. Just mix up what I think is going to be enough, and I use the rest on something else. So now all we do is just unscrew our little filling cap here, and it comes with a little handy dandy funnel, which you will need because you can't pour too much in here at one time. So I'm going to hold that funnel, and I'm just going to drizzle it in there. And it'll start overflowing when it fills up, so we'll know in just a second here when we've got enough. If you pour it in there too fast, it'll overflow as well, so just got to be a little bit patient with this particular step. Alright, I can see it's full now. Still have some left in my cup there. Like I said, I'll go pour that around a fig tree. Now we just put our cap back on there, screw that nice and tight. So then all we do is turn our water on, and you can see it's coming through there. So as you can see, pretty quick and easy setup there. Now I have not tried this rig outside with my drip irrigation systems yet, but I presume it would work pretty dang well. So I might get me another one for outside. I did notice online, I went to this company's actual website, and they have some commercial and agricultural options with a larger fill tank there, and so I may look at getting one of those for the new greenhouse, but really liking it so far. And if you want to get all deep in the numbers as far as how much fertilizer you're actually giving your plants, you can do that inside the instruction manual. There's all these calculations you can do to figure that up if you want to know exactly how much nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium you're giving your plants. I'm not really worried about those calculations. I know with that little bit of AgriThrive, I can keep all these plants in here happy, and I'm not really worried about burning. There are also calculations in that manual that tell you how long it's going to take you to use all that fertilizer that you put in that little pint tank there, or how much water has to go through there before it's completely diluted. But if you're like me and don't really want to fool with all that, the easy way to tell is just to pull this drain cap right here. I'm going to save this in my cup here because I know it hasn't been diluted much, but I'll show you. So if you ran enough water through here, this will run out clear. You can see there, it's running out basically the same consistency it was when we put it in there. But that's a good way to check to see, you know, you can do some trial and error, see how long it takes you for that to run clear, and you get a good idea of how long it takes you to use all that fertilizer. Now you may be thinking, well, it can't be all unicorns and rainbows. There's got to be some con to this system right here, something you don't like about it, and there is one little issue I have had with it. Now I'm not going to demonstrate this on camera because I'll get soaking wet, but this has happened a few times. I got a lot of pressure coming right there, and if I turn that valve on too fast, it will blow this piece right here off of that blue piece right there, and we just got a hydrant running in here. So I have to be a little careful and open my valve slowly, let it adjust a second, and we're good to go. I just can't flip it on real fast. Probably not an issue for most folks because they wouldn't have this much pressure, but in here it's an issue for me. So I hope you enjoyed that comparison there, and I should note that all three of those options are more options for the homeowner, just the hobby backyard gardener. There are other options out there, larger scale options that you can hardwire into your greenhouse plumbing or your garden plumbing, but most people aren't going to go to those lengths. These three options I showed you today are real simple, easy to use options for the backyard gardener. And they all have their place. They all can be useful. I just find this particular one right here more useful at this point. And as I told you earlier, I'll put a link in the description below where I got this so you can go read about it, read the specs, see if it'll work with your watering system. And the good thing about these, they're not that pricey. I think they're around 30 bucks or so. And if you want to learn more about the benefits of using that AgriThrive on our seedlings like we do in the greenhouse, watch this video we did a year or two ago talking about a study that showed how healthy the roots were on seedlings that have been fertilized with that AgriThrive organic fertilizer. Really, really interesting stuff. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.